My child, pause here and do not let this moment pass unnoticed, because what you are about to hear was meant to reach you before doubt could convince you to scroll away. Something has shifted behind the scenes of your connection, and the person your heart keeps returning to has finally spoken your name in a place where they once remained silent. They opened their heart to their mother. They told her about you. Not casually. Not as a passing thought. Not as someone who briefly entered their life and then disappeared. They spoke about you with a trembling honesty that surprised even them, and when their mother finally understood the depth of what they were confessing, she rose from her seat, looked directly into their eyes, and shouted, "You are." But before you hear how that sentence ended, you must understand why it carried so much power. This was not an ordinary conversation. It was not planned. Your soulmate did not wake up that morning intending to reveal everything. In fact, they had spent many days convincing themselves that silence was safer. They believed that if they kept their feelings hidden, they could remain in control. They thought they could avoid difficult questions, protect themselves from judgment, and postpone the decision their heart has been urging them to make. Yet heaven had already begun arranging the moment. A conversation that seemed accidental became the doorway through which a truth could no longer remain buried. Your soulmate had been carrying you quietly. Your name had become a secret prayer inside them. They thought about you during ordinary moments, while looking through a window, while hearing a familiar song, while sitting among people and suddenly feeling alone. They remembered things you said that you may have forgotten. They replayed your expressions. They wondered whether you felt the same invisible pull. They questioned why your presence seemed to linger even when you were not physically near them. And every time they tried to dismiss it, another memory returned with greater intensity. Their mother noticed the change before a single word was spoken. Mothers often recognize the weight behind silence. She saw how your soulmate would become distant in the middle of a conversation. She noticed the hidden smile that appeared when their phone lit up, followed by the disappointment when the message was not from the person they hoped it would be. She saw them staring at nothing, lost in a place no one else could enter. She sensed that someone had touched their heart deeply, but your soulmate refused to explain. For a long time, they answered every question with the same guarded phrases. "I'm fine. Nothing is wrong. I'm just tired." But their mother knew tiredness was not the real story. This was emotional exhaustion, the kind that comes from loving someone while not knowing what the future will allow. Your soulmate was tired of pretending they did not care. They were tired of acting unaffected. They were tired of hearing advice from people who did not understand the connection. Most of all, they were tired of fighting the truth that you had become important to them. Then something happened. It was small on the surface, but it broke the barrier they had built. Their mother asked one simple question: "Why do you keep looking toward the door as though you are waiting for someone?" That question reached a place inside your soulmate that had been under pressure for too long. They tried to laugh it away. They lowered their eyes. They moved their hands restlessly. But their mother did not look away. The room became strangely quiet, and in that silence your soulmate felt exposed. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that made pretending impossible. They realized that the person who had known them since childhood was now looking at them with the same concern she once carried when they were hurt and did not know how to explain it. Your soulmate finally whispered, "There is someone." Those 3 words changed the atmosphere. Their mother leaned closer, but she did not interrupt. She allowed the truth to rise slowly. Your soulmate spoke carefully at first, almost as if saying too much would make the feelings more real. They did not immediately reveal your name. They described the effect you had on them. They said there was someone who made them feel seen without demanding an explanation. Someone whose presence felt familiar even when circumstances were complicated. Someone they had tried to forget, yet every attempt only made the connection more obvious. Their mother listened as your soulmate revealed details they had never shared with anyone. They spoke of the first moment something inside them shifted. They admitted that they had been afraid of the depth of their feelings. They confessed that sometimes they pulled away not because they felt nothing, but because they felt too much. "This is something you may have misunderstood, my child." Their distance was not always rejection. Their silence was not always indifference. At times, it was the frightened response of a heart that had suddenly found something valuable and did not know how to hold it without losing control. Do not skip this moment, because the next part of their confession changed everything. Your soulmate told their mother that you had awakened something in them they thought had disappeared. Hope. Not the shallow hope of a temporary attraction, but the deeper hope of being understood, chosen, and accepted without having to become someone else. They said your energy made them question decisions they had accepted as permanent. They began imagining a future they had once stopped believing in. Their mother's expression changed. She had expected to hear about a simple romance. Instead, she was hearing her child speak as though their entire inner world had been rearranged. She asked, "Does this person know?" Your soulmate did not answer immediately. That silence revealed more than words could have. Their mother understood that something remained unresolved between you. Perhaps there had been confusion. Perhaps timing had separated what the heart wanted to bring together. Perhaps fear, pride, distance, family expectations, or old wounds had prevented a clear confession. Whatever the obstacle, she could see that your soulmate had not found peace by avoiding it. Then they finally said your name. The instant your name entered the room, something unexpected happened. Their mother froze. Not because she hated what she heard. Not because your name was unwelcome. She froze because she had heard about you before, perhaps indirectly, perhaps through a passing comment, perhaps through a story your soulmate told without admitting who you truly were. Suddenly, details that once seemed disconnected came together. She remembered the day your soulmate was unusually joyful. She remembered the evening they came home emotionally shaken. She remembered how they defended someone when another person spoke carelessly. She realized that every unexplained emotion had been connected to you. Your soulmate expected criticism. They had prepared themselves for questions that would make them retreat again. They expected their mother to say they were being unrealistic, too emotional, or too hopeful. They feared she might remind them of past disappointments or warn them to forget you. But that is not what happened. Instead, their mother asked, "Why did you hide this from me?" Your soulmate's voice broke when they answered. They said they were afraid she would not understand. They said the connection was difficult to explain because it did not follow a simple path. They admitted that sometimes even they did not understand why they could feel you so strongly while remaining uncertain about where they stood in your life. They said they did not want to sound foolish. They did not want anyone to reduce what they felt to imagination. Their mother stood up slowly. The energy in the room became intense. Your soulmate watched her, uncertain of what was coming. She walked toward the window, remained silent for several seconds, and then turned back with tears beginning to gather in her eyes. She was not crying because she disapproved. She was crying because she recognized something familiar in the way your soulmate spoke. She remembered a time in her own life when fear almost caused her to lose someone important. She remembered how long silence can become a prison. She remembered the regret of words spoken too late. She asked your soulmate, "Are you happy without this person?" Your soulmate tried to give a careful answer, but the truth was too large to hide. "I can continue without them," they said. "But I do not feel complete pretending they mean nothing." Their mother's face changed again. She understood that this was not about weakness or dependence. Your soulmate was not saying they could not survive without you. They were saying survival was not the same as living honestly. They could continue their routine, meet obligations, smile in public, and appear normal. Yet somewhere beneath all of it, they would know they had abandoned something sacred because they were afraid to be vulnerable. This is where the conversation became more emotional than either of them expected. Your soulmate began telling their mother about the times they almost reached out to you. They described messages typed and erased. Calls considered but never made. Moments when they felt certain you were thinking of them, only to convince themselves it was foolish. They confessed that pride had become their shield. They used silence to protect their dignity, but that same silence had created a distance they never truly wanted. Their mother listened, then asked the question your soulmate had been avoiding: "What are you waiting for?" The answer was complicated. They were waiting for a sign. Waiting for certainty. Waiting for you to take the first step. Waiting for circumstances to become easier. Waiting until they felt less afraid. Waiting until no risk remained. But deep inside, they knew a moment without risk might never arrive. Love does not always come with complete guarantees. Sometimes it arrives as a truth that must be honored before the outcome is known. My child, something extraordinary was happening in that room. Your soulmate was not merely speaking to their mother. They were hearing themselves clearly for the first time. Every sentence removed another layer of denial. Every confession brought them closer to the decision they had postponed. Their mother's questions became a mirror, reflecting the truth they could no longer avoid. She asked, "When you imagine letting this person go forever, what do you feel?" Your soulmate closed their eyes. They imagined a future in which your name slowly became something they were not allowed to say. They imagined learning that you had moved forward, that someone else had been brave enough to offer you the clarity they withheld. They imagined smiling politely if they ever saw you again while carrying 1,000 unsaid words. That vision broke something open inside them. Their breathing changed. Tears they had held back finally appeared. They whispered, "I feel like I would spend the rest of my life wondering." Their mother walked toward them and placed her hands on their shoulders. She looked deeply into their eyes, not as someone offering casual advice, but as someone trying to awaken them before regret became permanent. She said, "Then your fear is already costing you more than honesty ever could." Those words entered your soulmate like light through a closed door. For so long, they believed silence was protecting them from pain. Now they saw that silence was creating its own pain, slowly, quietly, every day. Avoidance had not given them peace. It had only delayed the moment when truth would demand to be faced. Stay with this message, because what their mother learned next caused her emotional restraint to disappear. Your soulmate told her about a moment when you had shown kindness while they were struggling. You may not have realized how much it mattered. Perhaps you gave encouragement when they felt unseen. Perhaps you remained gentle when others misunderstood them. Perhaps you offered forgiveness they did not believe they deserved. Whatever the moment was, it remained inside them. They had carried it as evidence that your heart was different. They said, "They saw me when I was not at my best." Their mother asked, "And what did they do?" Your soulmate answered, "They did not make me feel small." That sentence touched their mother deeply. She knew how rare it was to find someone who could see imperfection without using it as a weapon. She had watched her child hide vulnerability for years. She knew how carefully they guarded their weaknesses. The fact that they had allowed you to see beneath the surface meant the connection was more serious than they had admitted. Their mother began asking about you, not from suspicion, but from genuine curiosity. What made you laugh? What had you endured? What dreams did you carry? What kind of person were you when no one was praising you? Your soulmate's answers came quickly. They knew more about you than they realized. They remembered your values, your fears, the way you spoke about people you loved, the way your voice changed when discussing something meaningful. Their mother watched them come alive as they described you. Then she smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but it changed everything. Your soulmate noticed it and became silent. They were afraid to hope too quickly. Their mother said, "You have not spoken about anyone this way before." That truth frightened your soulmate because it made the moment undeniable. They could no longer pretend you were merely one possibility among many. You had reached a place others had not reached. You had become connected to their deepest questions about home, future, healing, and purpose. But there was still something they had not revealed. Their mother sensed it. She asked, "What happened between you?" The room became heavy again. Your soulmate looked away and admitted that misunderstanding had entered the connection. There had been moments when both of you were waiting for reassurance, yet neither knew how to ask. There were times when one of you needed closeness while the other responded with distance. There may have been words said from fear, or words never said at all. Your soulmate acknowledged their part. They admitted they had not always communicated honestly. They had expected you to understand feelings they never clearly expressed. This confession was difficult because it required humility. It was easier for them to blame circumstances, timing, or your reactions. But in front of their mother, they could no longer hide from the ways they had contributed to the confusion. They said they sometimes tested your feelings instead of trusting them. They withdrew to see whether you would follow. They acted unaffected to protect themselves. Yet when you gave them space, they interpreted it as proof that you did not care. Their mother shook her head and said gently, "You created a question," then became angry because they did not know the answer. Your soulmate became still. That sentence exposed the pattern. They had wanted you to read their silence, decode their fear, and offer certainty while receiving mixed signals. They realized you may have been confused too. You may have wondered whether reaching out would be welcome. You may have mistaken their emotional defenses for a closed door. For the first time, your soulmate considered that you were not the only one who needed to show courage. They had been waiting for you to remove every doubt while they remained hidden. Their mother reminded them that love cannot grow when one person is expected to carry all the vulnerability. Then your soulmate said something that made their mother's eyes widen. They admitted that recently they had felt you pulling away, not in anger, but in exhaustion. They sensed that your heart was becoming tired of uncertainty. They felt that you were beginning to protect your peace. This frightened them more than any argument could. Anger still contains emotional energy. Silence after disappointment can mean the heart is learning to release what it once waited for. Your soulmate told their mother, "I think I may be losing them." That was the moment her calm voice disappeared. She stood fully upright, and the concern in her face turned into urgency. She asked, "Do you love this person?" Your soulmate could not answer with another complicated explanation. The moment demanded truth without decoration. Their lips trembled. Their eyes filled. And finally, they said, "Yes." One word. But heaven had been waiting for it. The confession changed the energy around them. It was as if something hidden had finally been named, and once named, it could no longer be treated as a vague possibility. Your soulmate had admitted their love aloud, not only to their mother, but to themselves. Their mother stared at them in disbelief, not because she doubted the love, but because she could not understand why someone who felt so deeply had remained silent for so long. She began walking back and forth, overwhelmed by the thought that fear had been controlling such an important connection. She asked whether you knew. Your soulmate said, "Not fully." She asked whether they had ever clearly told you. They lowered their eyes. That was answer enough. Their mother stopped moving. Her face carried a mixture of tenderness, frustration, and urgency. She saw her child standing at the edge of a choice that could shape years of their life. She understood that no one could guarantee how you would respond. But she also knew that remaining silent would guarantee something worse: unanswered questions, delayed healing, and the possibility of losing a love that had never been given the chance to hear the truth. Your soulmate said, "What if I tell them and they no longer want me?" Their mother replied, "Then you will finally know." But what if they have been waiting for the honesty you were too afraid to give? The question entered the room like thunder. Your soulmate thought of you immediately. They remembered moments when your eyes seemed to ask for clarity. They remembered times you opened a door emotionally, and they responded too carefully. They remembered your patience. They remembered the subtle ways you may have been saying, "Meet me here. Speak honestly. Stop making me guess." Their mother continued, "You cannot ask someone to trust a heart you refuse to reveal." Your soulmate began crying openly. This was not weakness. It was release. The tears carried fear, longing, guilt, hope, and the exhaustion of pretending. Their mother embraced them, but she did not allow comfort to become another excuse for delay. She pulled back and looked at them with an intensity that made the next words impossible to ignore. She said, "Listen to me. Some people enter your life to teach you. Some enter to test you. Some remain only for a season. But once in a lifetime, someone arrives and makes you recognize the person you were meant to become. When that happens, you do not hide behind pride." Your soulmate's breathing became unsteady. They asked, "What should I do?" Their mother looked toward the phone resting on the table. The phone that had carried unsent words. The phone that had become a symbol of waiting. The phone through which your soulmate had watched your name, your picture, or your absence while convincing themselves that tomorrow would be easier. She pointed toward it. "Tell them the truth." Your soulmate did not move. Their mother's expression sharpened. She was no longer speaking softly. She understood that hesitation had already stolen enough time. The fear in your soulmate's face reminded her of how easily human beings can lose precious things while waiting to become fearless. She raised her voice and said, "Do you hear me?" Your soulmate nodded, but still did not reach for the phone. That is when something inside their mother broke through. She thought of your soulmate spending years carrying regret. She imagined them learning too late that you had cared. She imagined another person recognizing your worth while her child remained trapped in silence. Her love became urgent. Her words rose from a place deeper than frustration. She stepped closer, tears shining in her eyes, and shouted, "You are." Your soulmate froze. The final words were powerful enough to change the decision they were about to make. They were powerful enough to make your name feel like destiny rather than coincidence. They were powerful enough to send their hand toward the phone. But just before their mother completed the sentence, the phone screen suddenly lit up. A notification appeared. Your soulmate looked down. Their face changed instantly. Because the name glowing on that screen was yours.